All right, everyone. Welcome back to the Art of Masculinity. We have my brother from another mother over here, Steve Valentine. What's going on, man?
What up, man? It's
Not
good to
much,
connect with
brother.
you.
I know. I'm super stoked. We finally got you on here. You've been a busy, busy man since the last time we met. And you got
Oh,
your wicked ass Viking beard, so that's cool.
I'm trying to match you. I just don't have the full beard. I just have the part of it.
I know, but it looks so treacherous, man. I feel like you should have a axe in your hand right now. I mean, just
Awesome.
don't ask the freaking computer. I
Right?
need you on here. Uh, oh man, I'm so happy to have you on here. I know the community is going to get a shit ton of great content from you. We were just talking a little bit, and it's just what you've gone through in your life has blown my mind, and where you are now. It's just crazy. So I want to start you off with the masculinity round, so we can get
Oh,
into
here we
this and
go.
get you giving content.
Let's do it.
All right, brother. All right. First thing is, what is your spirit animal and why?
Oh, spirit animal. Man. It's funny because I listened to your podcast with Chris Hard and he wanted to be a Labradoodle. And I'm trying to think I'm trying to think of what the most creative animal is when it comes down to it, because that's really my spirit animal is what's creative and kind of conniving when it comes down to it. Um,
Conniving.
oh, geez. Spirit animal. Oh, can we come back to that?
All right, yeah, we'll
Yeah.
circle back around. All right, I think you're gonna have a really good one for this question. What song, whenever you hear it, do you absolutely have to sing along with?
Oh, dude, you know what? It's so Eminem is probably my favorite, and it's Lose Yourself.
Oh, nice. That's a good pump up song too.
It's a really good one because it's kind of crazy. I've been on this little kick with some stuff. Is that based on a book that I'm reading about identity and some habits? Is you know lose yourself in real estate. When it comes down to it, you've got one shot, one opportunity, and are you going to capture it? Like,
Yeah.
are you going to do that in your career? So that's my thing.
Oh, I like that. I think that kind of holds true with a lot of things. I think when you're
Yeah.
going through life, man, you see like these openings, and if you don't see it in the right perspective, it could completely change your trajectory.
Yep. You miss the opportunity because it's because of the mindset, or you're not seeing it in that aspect.
Yeah. That's good. I like it, man. All right. If you were a DJ, what would your DJ name be?
DJ creative.
DJ Creative?
Yeah.
I thought it was gonna be like DJ Viking, go fuck yourself.
Viking, right? Zero fucks given, right? You know what? It's something I got from my dad, is that real estate has been done in one way for so long, and it's realistically in my market. I specialize in what they call the crazy. I've got this tattoo on my forearm that says limitless,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a mindset that you can bring me a real estate problem and there's limitless solutions to what that looks like, but you have to understand how to create the solution. And I've created some crazy stuff in my lifetime, and I love that aspect of it.
That's cool, man, and that fits your personality. So I love that, man, because I feel like you're limitless. All
Totally. That's what it is.
right, all right. Your next one is, what is something that no matter who does it, they look stupid doing it?
No matter who does.
Matt Best could be doing it, and he'd look like a dumbass.
I don't know. Matt can pretty much do about anything, and it would be funny. Oh, something somebody does, no matter what they does, is stupid. Jeez, those are tough questions, dude. Oh, God, I'm gonna go back to the spirit
Spirit
animal.
animal.
I'd be a fox.
Okay, I like that. Yeah, it's conniving.
I can get around. It's getting around under the radar and figuring out how to get to what you want.
I can imagine you with a big bushy red tail.
Wow. Wow.
All right. So we got a fox. I think that's the first. You're my first fox.
Fox.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if it's better than a labradoodle.
We'll have to call Chris on that one.
Do most people are like, I'm a lion?
No, well, I mean, not really. I've had a couple. I've had a couple interesting ones. One of my favorites was one of my first guests. He's a good buddy of mine from Second Bat too, and he said he was like a baby orangutan with a mohawk, and I was like, dude, that is you so
Yes.
much.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So there's been some good ones, but yeah, there's been like maybe one or two like real basic ones, but yeah.
What would
No, that's
Matt
good.
be?
Matt, what the fuck was Matt? I can't remember what that asshole was. I think he was like a griffin or something. I don't know. Who knows?
Oh
But
man.
yeah. All right. So that's your spirit animal. Okay. Before we circle back to the what everybody looks stupid doing, the last one I have is going to be if animals could talk, which is the rudest?
Which is the rudest? My fucking Shih Tzu. She's a bitch.
Yeah.
She would be as rude as all get out.
That's awesome. So the Shih Tzu is the rudest.
Yeah, that's kind of what's on my chin is a Shih Tzu.
Yeah. It looks kind of like a chinchilla.
Right? I have man's dogs.
That's
Ay, ay.
awesome. All right, what does everybody look stupid doing?
Oh. Everybody looks stupid when they hold their phone down and they're talking on speaker or they're looking at it when they talk on speaker.
I like the phone down thing because it definitely
You're
looks
like,
kind of stupid.
right. There you go.
I think someone, I can't remember who it was, but they had the best one was just imagine this when someone's got those virtual reality goggles on. I was like, dude, hands down, you can never look cool. The Rock couldn't look cool doing that.
Dude, I will tell you the best story ever of virtual is because I've got teenagers. So we're all up at our second home up north and we're playing and we're doing this rock climbing game. This was after a couple of cocktails. I am not a big fan of heights. And I literally let go of the cliff and I fell forward and hit the TV.
Oh my
So
God!
I'm not a big fan of virtual.
I wish I could see a video of that.
Oh, and then we did virtual. We had it hooked up in the driveway in 4th of July, and one of my friends is kicking and punching, and he like hit his shin on the bumper of the Can-Am.
Oh.
It's like if you can pull the VR out when people are drinking.
Oh my God!
Get the video camera out.
Yeah, pull the phone out as well and just start recording, and don't ever put it on. No, that's good. I like it. All right, brother. So I know about you, and I know a little bit about your past, but let's share a little bit with the community so they can get to know where you came from and how you have developed into the man you are today.
All right. Where do you want to start? I told you my past is pretty colorful.
I love it. Let's start with when you started out as a mechanic because you fucking didn't want to be in real estate.
Dude, so I'm third generation real estate. My grandmother was one of the first licensed real estate brokers in Illinois.
Oh,
and
wow.
My dad and mom became real estate agents, and Phoenix is the melting pot of starting over. So if you're ever looking for a new beginning, this is where you start, is in Phoenix. And so they all moved out here in 1981. The market was shit. And I watched what my parents did. I mean, they were working on Saturdays and Sundays and on the phone. And my dad drove the creeper van with the phone on. I mean, I think when cell phones were installed in cars, it would honk when the phone would ring and you'd run out to answer the phone. And I'm like, I loved cars when I was a kid, and we're still a huge car family. In fact, we have a number of LLCs that hold our properties in it, and everybody thinks that they stand for, they're called F&F, and they think they stand for fix and flip. Mm-hmm. My kids grew up on the movie series Fast and Furious, so all of our entities are named after Fast and Furious.
Oh, that's funny.
So when I was a kid, when I was 16, I mean, I built some ridiculous trucks. When I turned 18, I had a 78 Blazer with 44-inch tires on it and a 600 horsepower motor in it. And that was just the way I lived. And that's what I wanted to do. And so I went into the automotive business. That's where I wanted to be. And then when it became a job, it sucked. It wasn't fun anymore. And I was super blessed by God that the last place I worked, somebody broke in and wiped out. You know how mechanics have the big toolboxes with all the stuff. They've spent their life savings on it and they're still paying for it. Somebody wiped out my entire toolbox, and I got a $35,000 or $40,000 check when I was 20 years old. And I was like, peace out.
You're like balling.
Yeah, I'm like, that's a whole year's income, and I don't have to so I went back to my dad, and my dad always said, if you ever want to try real estate, let me know. The difference with my dad was he was a good old boy from Tennessee. He was never going to spoon feed me. My dad was extremely successful in real estate at the time. And so when I came back into it, he's like, I'll give you a job. Here's the things you're going to do. It's $8 an hour. You get a gas expenditure while you're in real estate school. And my dad kept me there for the first 2 years. So most people get into real estate and they're like, oh, I'm going to get these big commission checks. And my dad never let me taste a commission check. He truly made me intern. He made me sit at a 2-foot by 2-foot desk at the end of his desk listening to his phone calls. That's how I learned the business.
Oh shit.
It was rough. And so now I get these new agents that come into my office and stuff like that. I'm like, are you willing to pay to play? Because that's what it's going to take. Because there's so much to learn in this industry, and it's not just about going out and selling somebody a house.
Do you sit them at the edge of your desk with a 2-by-2-foot desk and make them listen to
no,
your phone
they're
calls?
they're more so in the car listening to different things and sitting at appointments. Like, I mean, dude, the funniest appointment I ever went on with my dad is my dad used to have this 3-ring binder that was a listing appointment. He'd go through it was like 100 pages thick of all the stats and all this stuff. 11 o'clock at night, he had done that presentation so many times he fell asleep doing it.
Oh shit.
And I'm kicking him under the table. So that's how I learned.
That's awesome. That's an old school way of learning, man.
Old school.
All right, so you hopped in, you started following pops, and
Yep.
I know a little bit was, you went in and you ended up taking or partnering with your parents, right?
Yep. Yeah. So 2000, I got married to my wife, Wendy, and she got out of the restaurant business and she got a real estate license. So we were doing it together. We were working with buyers, representing them. And we had gone on my parents' real estate team, and they were one of the biggest teams here in Phoenix and almost nationally when it comes down to it. And so we started down that road, that trajectory where 2000, the .com had happened. The interest rates weren't great. Then 2001, 9/11 happened. And then there was a boost in the real estate market when the subprime lending came, where everybody and their dog had a loan. And so what happened at the end of the day was we get to 2000, let's go to 2004, and the market starts to go crazy. And my dad picks up this niche of investors. And so now we're closing 40, 50 houses or deals a month with investors. They're buying rental properties like nobody's business.
Wow.
Well, then you go to 2007. And in that 4-year period of time or 3-year period of time, we bought a commercial building. We opened these construction entities. We had 75 employees and fleet vehicles. And I was 25. I was balling. Like American Express was giving me credit like nobody's business. And we're like freaking no holds bar. And nobody saw what was about to happen. And so when it did happen, the market crashed, and my dad and I had a difference of opinion. Now, mind you, my whole entire career, even before I got married, I was working under my parents. And so I finally had to man up and go, you know what? This is not the best decision for my wife and my two kids at the time, which were toddlers.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had to make the very realistic decision to tell my dad, I'm out. And we walked. And it was really a scenario when you walk away from your family. I mean, I watched my mom take an open, our closed fist swing wife in my office, blaming her for what. And at that time that we made that decision, had invested $1 million worth of cash and assets from rental properties and things that we had sold. And we had personally guaranteed $1 million worth of debt. So, and we just lost our house to foreclosure. So I have two toddlers. I'm married for just 7 years, and we're $1 million in debt. And so, you know, we walked away from our house foreclosure wise before it was popular for people to do it. You know, come 2010, it was like, oh yeah, I let 10 houses go back to the bank. And I'm like, I was terrified. I was 27 years old when that happened. Wow. And I felt like a miserable failure as a man, as a dad. And there's actually a point in my life at that time, I remember sitting on an airplane writing a suicide note.
Oh, wow.
Wanting to go, you know what? I failed everybody. There's no way I can get out of this. And this is out what I want to do. I still have the note in my safe just to remind me, you know, it can get this bad, but it can also get this good. If you drive through it.
Oh,
go ahead.
That's an amazing sentiment, man. For guys to hear that you went that low, but the perspective you have now is how good it can be, and that's your reminder of how low you got. That's amazing.
When I always look back at it now and I go, okay, so, you know, and we've all had friends. I mean, I know you being in the military, you know, you've certainly seen it with the suicide and the other stuff and the PTSD, but you look at it and go, it's really bad right now, but what if I had done that? What impact would I not have had over the last 13 years of my life? What things would I not see in my teenage boys now? What would I not see in my business? What families would I not have impacted over this time? Had I been selfish? I think suicide is extremely selfish. It's a chicken shit way out. And so that was just a very, very low point in 2007. And then I had some more low points. Like it just kind of, you know, kept going. So at that time, you know, you look at things and you go, okay. And I actually had this conversation with my 17-year-old last night. And we're talking about work ethic and different things. And we're reminding him, hey, when you were a toddler and we lost everything, your mom we came from an income of 200 plus a year to your mom having to go back and wait tables. And there's nothing more miserable as a failure as a man to watch your wife walk out in December to go wait tables at 30 years old.
Yeah.
From what we came from.
Yeah.
You know, you built it up, you lost it, and now you have to go back to it. And then there was days that I get up in the morning and I go do sprinkler repair or landscaping or something, just enough to put cash in our pockets to feed our kids, pay our rent. And we were on the every other car payment plan. So one car would stay in the garage all month and the other car would stay outside, and the car that didn't make the payment was staying in the garage so it didn't get repossessed. And we did that for a year.
Oh, wow.
And it was, you're juggling, you're trying to make everything work in that time.
Oh my God.
And,
man.
you know, I had an amazing relationship, and it's one thing that's crazy is that as men, sometimes we burn bridges, or we, you know, being right, and we don't realize how important relationships are in our life. And when I started in real estate in 2000, I had a real estate broker, Sandy, and I had a great relationship with her. And this is a brokerage, a big brokerage, very exclusive brokerage, probably 2,000 agents in it. And in 2008, I got a call from her. And mind you, this is when I'm completely broke.
Mm-hmm.
And she says, "Hey, I've got this opportunity. Are you interested? And do you have $10,000?" I'm like, "Yeah." I don't have 10 grand. What am I going to do? So she's like, "Here's the opportunity." I'm like, "Okay, now I have to find 10 grand. And so I had a really good friend of mine that ended up being a partner for a while, and he loaned me the 10 grand
Oh, that's
so I
awesome.
could have this opportunity. But in that time in the market, if you had what we called an REO account, which was selling bank-owned homes for Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, any of the other banks, if you had that in, that you had endless amounts of income.
Oh, wow.
And so that was the opportunity I was given. And my only option was to say yes and figure it out. You know,
Yeah.
Grant Cardone's really big about that. Say yes and figure it out later.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I learned that early on, and we ended up getting into the REO space, and it was a disaster we came into, but I was determined that this was my shovel. You know, as far as character and integrity goes, we never bankrupt any of our debt.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, we had people on $20 a month payment plans. You know, I had this spreadsheet that was 3 pages long of debt.
Oh, wow.
And I just said, we're not going to do the BK thing. We're going to figure this out. And I did kind of the Dave Ramsey thing, like, you're below the line this month. And until you're nicer about it, you're going to stay below the line. And so we went through it, and I was determined to figure out the REO space and be the very best there was. And, I stuck my nose as far up people's asses as I possibly could to never lose that opportunity. And then, fatal blow again, 2 months later in November, I was doing a Mad Mud run with friends,
Mm.
which I was not the athletic person at the time. It was just something somebody invited me to do. The very last obstacle, it's November, there's barbed wire, and you had to push off and go into the cold water underneath the barbed wire. It was like 50 yards.
Uh-huh.
So I bent down and I pushed off as hard as I could, and there was something sticking out of the ground, and I went straight in with the top of my head, and it severed C5, C6. It crushed them.
Oh, shit.
So now we're, in the hospital getting x-rays and MRIs and all that other stuff. And we've got 2 doctors giving me a 50-50 chance if we do a surgery to be paralyzed.
Wow.
Here's your options. So my wife and I just kind of prayed about it, and we just said, you know what, we're just going to have faith, because there's no way. They wanted to put a halo on me for 6 months. They wanted to bolt to my head and my shoulders. I'm like, I got toddlers.
Yeah.
That's not going to happen.
Yeah.
And so, they split me open 2 days before Thanksgiving, 2008.
Uh-huh.
And they put 7 pins in my neck. And by the grace of God, 6 weeks later, it was back to normal.
Wow.
Yeah. So, but in that time, I was so determined to not let that opportunity go with the REO account
Mm-hmm.
that I sat in my bed, bundled up with neck braces, with a laptop and a phone and my assistant, and nobody knew I was there. We didn't tell
Wow.
anybody until after the surgery, because I didn't want anybody to lose faith that, oh, I can't depend on this guy,
Yeah.
because that was my opportunity to get out of debt.
Yeah.
And so we jammed through those accounts, and man, I'll tell you what, we sold more than 5,000 foreclosures in that 4-year period of time. And 2012, we had paid $1 million worth of debt off.
That's insane.
We owed American Express $400,000 at the time.
Whew.
And so we got through, and we made everybody whole, because there was even some personal loans in there that were, I just couldn't let go of, just as character integrity. Like, this person trusted me, and I never wanted to let them down.
Yeah.
There's even one lady that even today, sweet old lady. And at the time, again, I was 25, and we were borrowing money from people. And I borrowed money from this sweet old lady that was a past client of ours. And she actually forgave half of the debt. And I still pay her to this day like $1,000 a month. I still pay her cell phone bill because it helps her out, because of all the grace shit that she gave me back then. And my wife and I just decided, we've been so blessed. We're just going to take care of her until it's time.
That's friggin' amazing. Wow.
So it was just doing the right thing at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's all come full circle for doing the right thing. And so that was, that was just I'm going to dig in and dig out.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a big mountain to climb.
Well, and that's so inspiring because I think one of the things going back to like um, what you were talking about when you went to zero, I think that's a lot of blockage with men is not going necessarily to zero in the bank account, but the fact of like even switching jobs and going to zero in their knowledge account, right? Like guys are
Right.
scared to even transition that way. How did you end up pushing yourself through that to say, I can still make this, like I'm going to turn this around? Like what was it that kept you pushing through that?
Wife and kids.
Mm.
I mean, you look at the two boys that I have now, although sometimes I want to give them back, especially now, teenagers, bastards. Uh, they're fun kids. There's nothing I can say. Like if you've got little kids right now, just wait till they become teenagers because the shenanigans that happen, um, it's a lot of fun. But it was. I guess it's one of those things. It's almost the determination to say, this isn't going to stop what I want. And it kind of goes back to the conversation I had with my son last night. I grew up in a household where I remember the first pair of Air Jordans I wanted, right?
Mm-hmm.
My dad took me to Kmart. My dad's like, $125 for a pair of tennis shoes? You're nuts. My dad drove me to Kmart and he said, I grew up in the hills of Tennessee. I had an outhouse when I was your age. Like that's how poor he grew up.
Yeah.
He walked into Kmart. He found a pair of tennis shoes that were $9. This is what I'll pay for a pair of tennis shoes. If you want these things in life, then you're going to have to be willing to work for them.
Mm.
And that was a very early lesson because even when I was a teenager, look, my dad wasn't buying my trucks. My dad wasn't doing any of that. And I'm so grateful that my dad was very big on, if you want it, you're going to work for it. I'll contribute a little towards it, and it's something I almost feel like failure on with my kids because they're fucking spoiled now, right?
Yeah.
Because you want them to have that work ethic, but you want them to have the better life than you did when you grew up.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to find that mix on making sure that they have that desire for what they want.
Mm.
So a conversation last night, I'm just like, look, your mom and I have things that we want to accomplish, and we're willing to put in the work to make that happen. We're not willing to just get by and be mediocre. There's things that drive us every day to do the things that we do.
Mm.
And so, you go back to that conversation of, how did I go from zero to that? It was the drive that I wanted more. I wasn't going to settle for, okay, I'm going to go get a 9-to-5 job and give up on real estate.
Mm.
It's going to stay in the game.
Yeah. And I think that's a lot of guys resign to finding comfort somewhere. And then as long as they're collecting a paycheck, maybe it's not pushing them like they used to, or in the field they even want it to be. They're satisfied with just staying there. They're not happy, but they're
Right.
satisfied with the comfort level, right?
Right. And I think, I think some of that comes from this, so any of you women that are listening out there, I think part of my drive has to do with the fact that my wife always supported me in trying to move forward. It was never like, you need to go get a job because we need money. It was, hey, I'm behind you, whatever you need to do in order to get us where we need to go.
Mm.
And I think some women, they want to be in a comfort zone and they don't want to give their spouse the ability to go out and be the person that they want to be because
Mm-hmm.
of the insecurity of what happens there.
Mm-hmm.
And so that support at home is like critical when it comes down to it. And trust me, my wife has lived through some crazy shit that I've done. And even when I put all that cash and assets, my wife could have blamed me for losing everything. And
Mm-hmm.
she says, you know what? We did it together. It's, even though it was my parents, all those things, she's like, we did it together. We'll figure it out together.
Mm. That's awesome. I love that. And I love the message to the women, because I think that is truly an important part in today's society is, the women in our lives, they do have to support us, because, men's egos are very fragile. And as soon as you get down on them, they're going to get down on themselves. And it just creates a whole snowball effect of bad shit to happen. Right.
Right. Right.
Yeah. That's,
Absolutely.
that's so cool though, that she supported you that way. And I think that's incredibly important for women to do that. And guys out there to make sure they talk to their, you know, significant other on, hey, I do need your support because I really want to do this and I think I can help us, right?
But I think on the same, the same token in that though is that it's got to be a mutual agreement. The one thing that I wish Wendy and I would have talked more about early on was, hey, I'm willing to support you and I'm willing to try this for a time.
Mm-hmm.
But if it doesn't work or this much money invested, then let's get out. And I wish that we would have had some set boundaries early on, because it probably would have protected us a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
And my dad, so I don't remember what book it is, but this is super interesting, is that there's a story that my dad would tell. And it's the story that led us basically to financial ruin. Was every time we were close to something, he'd bring up this story. And after he passed, I remember reading the full story going, he forgot this freaking part. Like, what the hell? And so it was always the guy that struck gold, his family moved out, and everybody's mining gold and everything was going well, and all of a sudden the gold ran out.
Yeah.
And they couldn't find it anymore, this, that, and the other. The guy gave up and sold the land and the equipment for nothing. Well, the guy that bought it, so my dad was always like, hey, we don't want to be 2 feet from the gold mine and give up.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the issue is, and I think this is a big thing for guys to understand, is when the guy that bought the land, he hired a geologist to track the vein. So he went out and sought advice, mentor, something from somebody else.
Mm.
And that guy tracked the vein, and he was right. My dad was right. The guy was only 2 feet from the vein,
Mm-hmm.
but he missed the part that, hey, we need to go get advice to find the vein.
Mm.
We need to go surround ourselves with the right people to find the vein.
Mm.
Because you can dig in the wrong direction for years, but there's somebody out there that's smarter than you are that can help you find the vein or point you in the right direction or make sure that you're staying on the right track. And I think
Mm.
sometimes men are uncomfortable. My dad was one of those. It's one of the things that I learned not to do as a man now. I have so many mentors and I've paid so much money for coaching and surrounded myself with the people in the tribe that I want to be around, to make sure that I can go to those people and go, dude, what do you think about this? Not that I want judgment or anything, but I want opinions of whether or not it's a good idea, a bad idea, or hey, you might want to do this a little bit differently. It's part of the reason I'm in Chris's mastermind.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just Chris, but it's the 30 other people in there, like you, your wife. It's like, it's different opinions that make you see things different. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes as men, we want to do things our own way, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, shit, I still fight wanting to ask people for help, man.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Heck
So
yeah.
so I've learned early on just to be humble, because in real estate, when my dad was in it, it's kind of like, remember in second grade when you're doing tests, you put folders up to make sure you're covering all your stuff.
I do. I do
Real
remember that.
Right. Real estate was that way when I started in the business. Nobody would share anything.
Yeah.
You weren't friends with other real estate agents. You weren't anything. And now some of my biggest partners, biggest fans, they're real estate agents. I mean, I've got a very good friend and partner that we own our commercial building with. We run separate businesses, but we do things together because we can accomplish more together by doing it that way.
Yeah. And you can bring yourself, you can bring each other up. I think that's so important too, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Have you had a lot of influences that way, a lot of things in your life that have turned out in the real estate business where when you've created and cultivated those relationships, you both have risen?
Yeah, it's kind of like the coaching and mentoring I do in the real estate space.
Mm,
It's, I go out and I do free teachings so that I can give back to people in hopes that they don't make the same shitty mistakes that I made.
mm,
And you cultivate relationships, you cultivate friendships. And obviously, you've got to protect yourself in some aspects because some people obviously suck you dry at the end of the day.
yeah.
But those relationships, when I think back on all the things that I've done, it's incredible what we've been able to accomplish together versus if we were playing that game like your competition.
Yeah.
And that's
That's
that's part of it. People get into business and they think they're competition. They're not.
yeah. I mean, who was I? I was listening to somebody or read something, and they were talking about how there's more than enough out there for everybody to sit there and perceive somebody in your field as competition is insane. You
It's
know?
that mindset of abundance versus scarcity.
Yeah, exactly.
if,
Yeah.
if you're always thinking that there's going to be more, it's kind of like, when I said yes to, okay, I can find the $10,000, that's a mindset of abundance rather than scarcity. And same thing now when we buy houses, it's we find the deal, then we go find the money. We don't go
Hmm.
find the money and then find the deal.
Mm, I love that. That's a great perspective. And actually, that brings me into two things I wanted to touch on with you since I have the real estate expert on here is for the scarcity part, what do you say to people out there or men out there that are sitting there thinking like, "Oh my God, real estate's already so saturated, I could never even do that."
Well, real estate is there's two parts of it. It depends on what part you're looking at. So a lot of the big talk right now is fix and flips, right?
Mm-hmm.
HGTV's got the spin on it, all that other stuff. We've been knee deep in that business.
Mm-hmm.
We've flipped more than 500 homes in the last 5 years. It's one of our parts of business. I don't know that we'll do a ton more of it. We
Mm-hmm.
have we have reverse roles. My wife is actually a general contractor. She manages the crews, the design, all that fun stuff.
That's
I
cool.
stay here in the office and do the numbers. But real estate, if you look at it from longevity, it's getting into it smart and having somebody that you trust. That's one of the things that I do in Phoenix is I coach and mentor investors and people how to invest smartly. We own a little over $15 million worth of real estate right now, and that's been acquired over the last 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
It's not been a long term, but it started off with small increments and getting people to understand like what is the smart thing to invest in and why is it smart to invest in. I
Mm.
was shocked last year when I spoke all over the country to real estate agents that I can speak to 5,000 plus real estate agents and ask who owns investment properties in here. And only 5% of the room will raise their hand. But if you ask the question of how many of you would sell a house to an investor, and everybody will raise their hand. But 95% of them don't know what they're talking about. You can't sell somebody something you don't know anything about. I mean, you
Mm.
can, but it could destroy. Like you can ruin somebody financially by selling them the wrong thing because you don't know anything about it.
Yeah.
So the market might be saturated, and it's not necessarily saturated as it is. I think the better question is are the prices too high? Depends on your market.
Mm.
You guys are in a pretty expensive market, right? In DC,
Yeah, DC's
right?
pretty up there.
Right. So you look at the Phoenix market, you can still buy entry level homes in the 200 to 250 range
Mm-hmm.
that are getting $1,600-$1,700 a month of rent out of it.
Mm.
And it's the long term play. Real estate's the only thing that you can buy with 10 to 20% down
Mm-hmm.
and control a $200,000 asset that somebody else will pay off over time.
Mm.
It's a super boring investment,
Yeah.
but it's also super boring from the standpoint that I don't wake up in the morning and go, "Oh, what's the stock market doing?"
Yeah, that's true.
Right? So
Mm.
how many people, based on what's going on in the Middle East right now, are worried
Yeah.
about what their portfolio is going to do? I'm not worried about it because people need a place to live. Now, are my
Mm.
rents going to go up and down, those types of things? Yeah. Do I have to put money into them? Yes. But at the end of 30 years, if you have 30-year mortgages on them, You've definitely invested some in it. You have great tax write-offs for owning them.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of, in the next 15 years, the portfolio that we currently own will produce $40,000 to $50,000 a month in income.
Mm.
And somebody else has paid off that $15 million worth of assets.
Mm.
But somebody doesn't have to go to the crazy side of wanting 50,000. Although if you listen to Chris Harder on the last podcast that you did with him, you might need $50,000 a month in income to create retirement based on inflation and stuff like that. So,
Yeah.
That's what I like, is just the control of it. And it's because it's something that I know, and there's so many ways to do it. And that's where I kind of make my money, is being creative and showing people how to utilize equity in a property, people in desperate situations, things that need repairs. And that's where I trigger everything with the investors, is I want to teach people that have never invested how to do it wisely and what the benefits are of it. Because like I said, if you call the average real estate agent and say, I want to buy an investment property, and they're going to sell you something that they think works.
Mm-hmm.
But I've gone through the numbers and all the things that make the ideal rental property that reduce long-term liabilities. And it's, I created a buy box. Like, this is what it looks like. And this is how to get the ideal long-term return that you want out of real estate.
Well, I love that the way that you look at this. So, and I'll give you full transparency here, because you and I are friends. But I grew up looking at real estate realtors same way as you do like car salesmen, right? Like,
Yep.
snake oil salesman, right?
Yep.
So, and I think people probably have that similar reaction.
Absolutely.
But the way that you show this and the way that you talk about it, you're literally coming from a place of trying to help them regardless of what happens, but you want the best. What's the best for whoever's investing, right? Like,
right.
Truly do.
Right. Because it's come out of experience. So what most people, and forgive me for whatever real estate agents are listening, but take this to heart, is that what I bring to the table is not a suit, a tie, or anything else. Like I said, before we got on this, I wear a pair of red Chucks every day, a pair of jeans and a t-shirt. I'm tatted. I got a beard. And you know what? My knowledge in the investment space is so sought after in the Phoenix market, because people are like, I don't know how to do it. Where do I start? How do I do this? And there's multiple ways to do it. I'm not in this for the sale. I don't have to sell a house. We buy a lot of properties, we solve a lot of problems, and we create a lot of solutions. But I want people to see what the long-term plan is and what the benefits are to them, so that they can make smart decisions. And again, it's not about the commission for me. It's about, this is the best play for you, and this is why. And the reason I can say that is because I've done it. I told you my email. I said, ask me the craziest stories, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was gonna get to that.
Yeah. So, and I'm just getting on this in the rentals, because people have a fear of, oh God, freaking tenants trash things, all this other stuff. There's all kinds of ways to protect yourself in that, but you have some crazy shit happen. So I'm going to hike the mountain 5 months ago, and I see this caravan of police cars and assault military vehicles. I'm like, God, I hope they're not going to one of my houses. Like, that's the thing you think.
Oh shit.
I got a call 5 hours later from Glendale PD. Need you to come down to the station. We SWAT had to serve a search warrant on one of your rental properties this morning. So I go down there. They freaking blew the front door off of it to serve a search warrant. And it had nothing to do with the tenant. It had to do with a roommate he moved in that I didn't know about.
Oh shit.
But here's the funny thing. The house was in perfect condition. The only thing I had to do was replace the door on it. But the problem was afterwards, and again, this probably cost me 10 grand at the end of the day, and it happens. And it's also one of the things I try to guide people through, is they have to have a mental toughness to go, oh, well, It is what it is. That's part of the business. It's a bad day in the stock market. That's what it is.
Yeah.
But it's also that they're financially stable to take on something. We talk about reserves and those types of things. So anyway, so that house, it was, I laugh at my kids and I tell people, like, my kids are so done with my shenanigans when it comes down to real estate. So we go to that house to check it out because the cops called and said we arrested a couple of tweakers there. I'm like, okay. So I went to check it. So I get my firearm out and I go to the front. The window's kind of cracked. So I open it up. I put my gun in and some guy pops his head out.
Oh, shit.
And the house is supposed to be vacant. So now I've got this guy held at gunpoint in the front yard. My kids are just playing video games in the car. Like, oh, dad's got another guy on the ground with a freaking gun.
Oh,
So, but that's just the stuff that happens. You're just like, it is what it is. And you have to know that there's some days you write checks for it, but it's not the short term.
Yeah.
It's the long term.
Wow.
That house was rented for 4 years. I had no repairs on it. I got to put a little money into it. I'll get more rent out of it. No big deal. But it's a mentality thing to just understand what that looks like.
Yeah, I mean, you do it in everyday life in general, with smaller things. And even though at the end of the day, you put some money back into that house to fix whatever, at the end of the day, you have a multi-$100,000 home as an asset,
Right.
because you own the property or
Right.
you're mortgaging the property.
Right.
But yeah, that's a great like understanding to have that mentality for people wanting to get into real estate. The other question I have for you is, today there's a lot of these companies who want to call you and say, hey, we can run you through our course on how to do real estate. We have investors already. We want to link you guys up. We'll teach you how to do it. It's super easy. Come on, you can start a side business. I think a lot of people in today's society, men and women, are probably getting hit up by those companies. What's your take on that whole view of things?
There's some big companies out there, I won't say names, that I was actually shocked to learn, they do these big meetups, 2 days free, and then they sell somebody a $50,000 real estate course. I just talked to somebody recently that are like, I refinanced my house to buy this course and they still can't figure it out.
Wow.
And there's theory in it, and the theories are all right. But are you really going to do what it takes to go through it? And that's the hard part, is that you can spend that money, or you can do a consult with somebody like me that's going to guide you through the process, show you what to invest in, and look at the long term. A lot of those guys, what they're selling is how to find, what we call a deal, which is finding something that's a desperate situation or whatnot. And the reality is, what I teach people, there's nothing that I teach. And I say this at the beginning of every course I teach. I'm like, look, this is not a get rich quick course. I'm not taking your money. What I'm doing is preparing you for a conversation with your neighbor, a conversation with a friend. The minute, I can't tell you how many homes I've bought from friends, family, and neighbors at events and other things when somebody's like, hey, my dad just passed. I need to get rid of this house. Are you willing to buy it? It's that conversation that you're prepared for, to say, yes, I'll buy it. But you have to have knowledge that backs it up, which is, what's the house worth? Is it going to be a rental? Is it something that I sell to an investor? There's so many things that are there that can create income, but it's the mindset of being prepared, of being an investor. And that's a lot of what I try to teach real estate agents. We talked about the Eminem song, right?
Yeah.
You got one shot.
Yeah.
Okay. This is what I got when my dad died. My dad spent 5 years in the foreclosure market buying houses. He bought 900 homes for investors, and he never bought anything for himself. So he dies in 2015 owning nothing, while the investors he worked for made millions, right? That changed my whole mindset, that like, I need to be very prepared as an investor mindset and opportunity mindset, not real estate agent mindset. A real estate agent is transactional, they're commission based, and I'm completely solution based. You'll love this story. I I work very closely with a undercover department with Phoenix PD.
Uh-huh.
And I actually just turned a house over that we bought for them to do an undercover sting on. I'm like,
Uh-huh.
I just bought this house. He's like, we need a shady house. I'm like, here you go. And so they're wiring it up to do a sting for Craigslist on it,
Oh shit.
sex trafficking sting. And
That's
but one of
awesome.
their guys retired, and they've lived in the house 30 years. He was 34 years on the force, and they wanted to buy a new build, which was their dream house. They haven't done anything to the house they've lived in for 30 years.
Jesus.
So a friend of mine that referred me to them, she called. She's like, you got to go meet with them. I'm like, okay. So I meet with them. The house is kind of in shambles. They really, if they wanted to pull money out, they could to fix it up, but it wouldn't be the best idea. So they're buying a new build. It's their dream house. I walk them through that process. We sell them the new house, but I bought their house from them for a fair price. They get to live in it for the next 6 months while the new build is being built. They don't have to do any repairs. They don't have to do anything.
Mm,
But it was being prepared to provide that solution for them
that's cool.
in order to capture all of it. It makes it easy on them. I get to have an investment property, which we'll probably flip at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm.
The funny thing about that house, we're sitting at the table, and it's an acre lot, and a cow runs by the window. And it slips on the pool deck and falls in the pool.
Oh shit.
And now the three of us, his neighbor and himself and myself, we're trying to pull a cow out of the pool.
No, stop
It
it.
was, I swear to God, I
Stop
can't
it.
make this stuff up. I have the most colorful real estate career that you could possibly imagine.
And as a man, realizing you couldn't lift that cow on your own, how did that make you feel?
The neighbor finally got a noose around him, and we drug him over. The cow almost drowned in the pool.
Mm.
And he got him over to the steps and got the cow out.
Oh,
And then this little
Jesus.
5'2" Hungarian guy is holding onto a rope and a 1,000-pound cow while it runs through the yard.
Oh,
It was awesome.
Jesus.
It's awesome.
Oh, my God.
So
Oh,
that whole thing with them was not a transactional thing.
yeah, yeah.
How can I provide the best solution for them and
Right.
serve them in the best way?
Yeah.
Most people go out and go, well, you're going to need to fix this when you put it on the market, and we have to go through the inspections. And it's like, it's all these things that people are so mortified of, especially, can you imagine not selling a house in 30 years and now you've got to go through this process?
Yeah. That and not having fixed it up in 30 years
Right.
too, you know?
So again, you go back to that same thing, back to the course thing. People are like, hey, you should
Yeah.
do this. So if you're going to spend money on a course, you need to be willing to do the work and understand it. And the hard part about it is that I've been in the business 20 years, so I understand the value of a property. I understand the construction. I understand the cost.
Mm-hmm.
When you try to learn that from some 3-day course, it's almost impossible
Yeah.
without the experience behind it, without somebody truly guiding you through it. And it really goes back to how I learned real estate, right? I
Mm-hmm.
sat at the foot of my dad's desk, learning from somebody who is experienced. If you want to become a real estate investor, you have to start learning from somebody that's experienced, and you have to be willing to know that you're going to give up money in order to learn those skills.
Mm.
And if you don't, it's going to cost you a lot more money than just the course.
Mm. Yeah, realizing that you got to invest in yourself, right?
Invest in yourself, invest in a mentor, be willing to, learn up front from somebody that actually understands it. Like I said, 95% of real estate agents don't understand the investment side.
Mm-hmm.
We've lost money, we've made money, but I know what to look for now. So I
Yeah.
know how to guide somebody through the process rather than the theory of the process.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome, man. And I love that you hit the mentorship again. And that's something I kind of wanted to talk to you about too before we wrap things up is,
Yeah.
you've invested in yourself a lot when you had nothing. And as you've come out of having nothing and you guys have put together this beautiful life that you guys have created, what was that like mentally and like in your masculinity to challenge yourself and say, I'm going to invest in myself for a mentor, for a group of people that are like minded that I can build with and can help me and support me. What was that like going through that, and how did you make that decision to fully commit to that?
You know what's interesting is that I was just in a one-day event with a kind of a mentor. I know him because we've spoke on a similar stage at a couple of events, Ronnie Doss, and he said something, kind of did an exercise that really made me realize what it was. And here's the thing, especially for men. If somebody were to ask you right now, who are the three most important people in your life, who are they?
I I probably could give you like
Taylor's going to be pissed at you in 2 seconds.
10.
Right. So where do we start as men? So you're like, some of the people in the room are like, well, I have 3 kids and a wife, so how do I choose, right?
Yeah.
And his point is that 90% of people, they start naming significant other, their parents, their kids. Rarely do we go, I'm the most important person in my life, and here's why. If I'm not pouring into myself, I'm worthless to everybody else that's important to me. If I'm not putting in the work to myself mentally, physically, all those other things, if I'm not that most important person, then I can't give to everybody else. And what ends up happening is that if I'm the least important person, everybody else gets your shit at the end of the day. Nobody gets your best. So, when we start investing in masterminds and things like that, my wife's never been into the woohoo world. When I start telling her, like, I'm writing a 5-figure check for a mentorship, she's like, you do what you got to do, but it's one of those things though, that I feel, and she knows, like the first time I came back from Chris Harder's mastermind, she's like, I love it when you go and I love it when you come back, because of the mental shift and the challenges and the things you come back with. And I can tell you right now, just in Chris's mastermind, the shifts that I've made in my real estate business, in my mental space, and my connections has been 10 times fold what I've invested in it. It's sometimes you pay and it may not be a monetary return, like as far as like I got 10 times or 10-fold. I think some of the stuff that I learned from mastermind has saved me hundreds of thousands of dollars of mistakes that I could have done if I had not had that mentoring. But I also think too, we talk about mentors and coaching and things like that. I think there's people in everybody's space. Who's I listening to? I was listening to a sermon at church, and Ashley Woodridge, CCV, he mentors with John Maxwell. He talked about John Maxwell and his mentorship with him. And the way he set it up was, he's a mentor, and I know that he doesn't have a lot of time. And I meet with him in person once a year, and the other 3 times are via Zoom or Skype or whatever. He said, but when you're asking for a mentor, you can't ask somebody for a ton of time, but you can go to them with an agenda or questions or advice on certain things in order to salvage their time. And I remember after that sermon, I had a good friend of mine reach out to me. He's like, hey, I'd really like for you to mentor me in the capacity that Ashley talked about. Will you do this? So we meet every other month for like 30 minutes, 45 minutes. And he comes with a specific things question-wise, because his kids are little and he's trying to figure things out. There's people in your circle that mentorship is free, but you have to reach out and truly want that, and truly not take advantage of it, but appreciate that time with them and not waste their time. It's not a coffee date. It's not a beer date. It's something that you're truly looking for. And there's people all over the place inside your circle that will give you that up if you will humble yourself to ask for that mentorship.
That's super powerful.
I think guys, especially as we're parenting, as we're doing those different things, we don't have it figured out, right? So you look to somebody like this friend of mine. He's got a 9-year-old and a 6-year-old. I've got a 15 and a 17-year-old. He's like, I want to make sure that I learn from somebody else's mistakes and also, the things that you felt you did right.
Yeah.
We have a rule in my house. Like I said, for any of you guys, you have kids, right?
No, I got 2 fur babies.
Oh,
Eh.
not yet. All right. Well, good.
Oh
This
shit!
is
I just
good.
went down a notch in Steve's book.
This is good advice for you. So my wife has been very good about letting me do the messy with the kids.
Mm-hmm.
And if I can say one thing to guys is don't be afraid to get down and dirty and do something completely outside the box with your kids. I've got a brother in jail. He's got nieces, and I've got nieces and nephews. And so one Father's Day, I came home and it's hot here. I came home with 10 gallons of ice cream and chocolate syrup and whipped cream. And I laid on the trampoline and let them make me a human sundae. We've had ice cream wars in the kitchen.
Oh,
We've done 30-foot hallway slip and slide with water wars in the house. And those are the memories that your kids really go back to.
That's
And
cool.
don't be afraid to create those memories.
Oh, that's really cool, man. I love those stories. That's
Oh
awesome.
my God, dude. My wife puts up with a lot of crap.
That's awesome, man. Well, I want to be respectful of your time. We're winding down here, so I got one last question for you, Steve. First off, I appreciate you coming on here and contributing to the Art of Masculinity community, man. It's been a blessing just meeting you and knowing you and becoming friends with you over the time that we've spent together. But the first thing is, how can we as the community support you moving forward?
The big thing is, following on Instagram. I try to do a lot of motivation, different things like that, different things about real estate. So that's where a lot of my knowledge is plastered on there. So that's at Steve D. Valentine on Instagram. Same thing at Facebook. And then website is thelimitlessrealtor.com.
Okay. And for everybody listening, we'll get all that out with the show notes. I'll be posting it on my IG as well, and we'll make sure that you guys know where to find Steve at. Well, I appreciate that, brother. Your last question of the night is, what does the art of masculinity mean to you?
I think it's a great question. And here's how I'll answer that. I think a lot of us grow up like I did, where even for my dad, there's a certain way you're supposed to be. When I got into real estate, it was supposed to be suits, ties, this, that, and the other. And I think the art of masculinity is settling into who you truly are. And once you can find that, you need to own it. I'm not uncomfortable going in to show a $3 million house in a pair of jeans and Chucks. I don't have to dress up to impress anybody. If you don't like what you see and you don't appreciate the knowledge and what I bring to the table, that's okay. I'm not for everybody. But too many times, I think as men, we try to do the be everything to everybody rather than truly being true to ourselves, so that we have that identity of who we truly want to be.
I love that, man. That's powerful because I think you hit the nail on the head, man. That's really good. I love that. And I get one miss round for you. And you and I talked about this before we hopped on here, but you said there is a book out there that you really, really love and you would love other people to read as well, right?
Oh my God. And I know we're going longer than expected, but I have to tell you, I know it's the, beginning of the year. The book Atomic Habits, James Clear. It is life-changing. I've been posting it all over my stories. I actually text James Clear today. I'm like, dude, I am so obsessed with you. I'm sorry. But my team is studying it. I've never taken a book and studied it, wrote notes. And this one it's about your habits. And so what he really breaks down is that so many of us set these big goals, right? It's the first of the year. I haven't been to the gym in 5 years. Well, not me, but people haven't been
Yeah.
in the gym in 5 years, and all of a sudden they're going to go an hour a day for 5 days. And so
Yeah.
what he breaks down is that there's outcome goals and there's or outcome habits, which means I want to lose 30 pounds. So you create habits to lose the 30 pounds, but you don't create the habits to create your identity as a
Mm.
healthy person. And so what happens is we set those goals for income, for health, for anything. And once you hit that outcome, you've accomplished it and it breaks your habits. So you
Oh,
didn't
wow.
set habits that create the identity that you want to be, that who you want to be. And so it's kind of like, as I'm breaking it down today, was really powerful. And that's just chapter 2. I've listened to it and read it, but it is ridiculous when it comes down to anybody that's trying to accomplish big things. He talks about you set systems that become habitual, that become your lifestyle without any pushback. It's muscle memory. You go do the same
Mm.
thing. I go to the kitchen, I do the same drink, I take the same pills, I sit at my desk at the same time, and it's not long periods of time.
Mm-hmm.
It's creating the short periods of time that create that repetition, that creates a lifelong habit for who you want to be. It's kind of like the trajectory,
Mm-hmm.
not the outcome.
Yeah.
I'm not looking for the outcome. So like right now, I'm back into my weight training and my eating and all that stuff.
Yeah.
I'm not getting on the scale. I'm not looking to see how my pants fit. I'm looking at the habitual change,
Mm.
not the outcome change. If I stay with the habitual change, the outcome will happen over time. It may not be as fast as I want it to,
Yeah.
but if I can create those habits, it'll create the person that I want to be.
I love that. I'm definitely going to be buying this. So
Oh,
that's
dude,
awesome.
it's money. I'm
Uh,
telling you, like you guys out there, freaking grab it, read it, highlight it, study it, and knock it out.
Atomic Habits. All right, brother.
Yep.
Well, I appreciate you so much. And I will get all this stuff out so everybody can follow you. If you aren't following him, go check him out, Steve D. Valentine. And I appreciate you, brother. Thank you for being on the show.
Dude, you as well. It was awesome.
All right, man. And to all the listeners, drop the ego and stay humble. Until next time, guys. Take it easy, Steve.